Thank you, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Reverend David. I'm always honored to be here with your community. And as I was reflecting on the perfect topic a couple of days before the election, the presidential election here in the United States, what came through for me is the title Healing the Divide. And I want to start by saying something that I think is very simple and yet can be powerful if we lean in. And that is this: we are at a time when we are ready to make a fundamental decision. And that fundamental decision is quite simple. Is it true that the essence of who and what we are, Christ consciousness, God essence, Buddha nature, our true being, our authentic self, all the words that we use for this power that dwells within us, that is us, is this power stronger than the conditions of the world, or is the world, the seeming conditions of the world, stronger than this power? That to me is the fundamental decision that I'm inviting us to make at this moment. Unity's first principle is there's only one power and one presence active in the universe and in my life, God, the good omnipotent. So if that's true, that must mean then that we have a fundamental decision to make. Either this power is infused in everything we see in the world, or it isn't. And the truth is, we are always making that choice. And many times we are making that choice consciously, and sometimes we are making that choice unconsciously. And if we go unconscious about that choice, the conditions of the world can begin to choose for us. We come into the world as a perfect expression of that divinity, a spark of divinity. And then we get programmed by the world to believe that the world in many teachings and in many frameworks, in many educational systems, family systems, churches, synagogues, spiritual communities, we get taught that the conditions of the world are more powerful than the essence of who we are. And some of us, I'm going to guess there are a very small percentage of us who were born into New Thought and had New Thought teachings from the very, very earliest time in our life. I know there are a lucky few of us, but for many of us, we come to New Thought and we encounter this possibility that there's actually only one power and one presence, and that's the essence of each and every one of us. And that fundamental decision is, am I going to see the world through that lens, or am I going to see the world through this lens of the programming that we received? And I'll tell you some of the programs I received. I received messages that the world wasn't safe. I received messages that people were different than me because of their age, their race, their sexual orientation, their gender. I was programmed consciously and unconsciously from a very young age to look at the world through a divided lens. Us and them, and good and bad, and right and wrong. I also remember a time when I was very young that I didn't have that program. I can still remember being that really small child and just feeling so loved and like so much loving energy, like actually love itself. I can remember lying in the backyard mesmerized by life. I can remember feeling the sun hit my face and thinking, this is so warm and incredible. I remember feeling like I wanted to just hug everyone. And then I came into a world that started teaching me things. And I started absorbing and deciding some fundamental things about myself and the world that sounded something like this: it's too scary here. I must protect myself. I don't think it's okay for me to act this way. Apparently, boys are supposed to act a certain way. Girls are supposed to act a certain way. Because of the place I was born, I need to act a certain way. In my family, this is how we do it. And so this innate experience of openness, of oneness, of awesomeness, being in awe of the world, that we can look at a really small child and see that that's the innate experience of being human. Because we've been saying for many, many years that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And I woke up one day and I asked myself the question, what if we're actually spiritual beings having a spiritual experience? That we came into the world, yes, as a human incarnation, but we came in as spirit. And for whatever reason, whether we've chosen to be here on planet Earth, or we were sent here for a mission to be love, to be light, whatever the reason we are here, for some reason we've chosen or we've been chosen to incarnate into a world that in many times focuses on the divide. And if you look at what's happening politically, I mean, of course, we can say this at any time. We can say, if you look at what's happening politically, we can see that there is a divide. But that has been true at least my entire life. I've been hearing that same narrative. I was taught very early from my father what is the right way to think about politics and what is the wrong way. And I remember in my 20s thinking, oh, I don't know if I agree with everything that I downloaded from him. As a matter of fact, I grew up in an area where we did a mock election, and I was one of two people who voted for this presidential candidate. It was 1972, so maybe you can figure out. Wait, was it 72? No, it was 1976, 76. So you might remember who was running for president in 76, and I grew up in a place where 95%, actually, I don't know the percentage, but it was me and one other kid who chose one particular candidate. Everyone else chose the other person. And so from a very early age, I was taught, like I said, by conscious and sometimes unconscious people, the rules of the world, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, and what's bad. And even though that has a place, what I want to say is that actually healing the divide is taking a look at the divide and asking, does it really exist? In unity teachings, we have a teaching, or we draw a distinction between relative reality and ultimate reality. In relative reality, we have opinions, we have points of view, we have things that change, that the world is ever changing in the external, but then there's ultimate reality. And ultimate reality is that changeless dimension within ourselves, that truth of who and what we are. And once I dedicate myself to spending time cultivating a relationship with my essential self, from that place, then start pretty much questioning everything I've ever absorbed or been taught about the world and ask myself what's true for me. And the ultimate truth, truth with a capital T, is beyond any seeming division. It's that place where we meet, that we understand that we are not just connected, but we are actually one. And so that sounds nice on a Sunday morning or a Sunday afternoon, or sometime if you're doing a spiritual book study. But what about that time when you hear someone on TV saying things that you just find yourself not agreeing? Or you find yourself having that moment of, how dare they? And maybe you get what once was called triggered, I like to call activation. Something gets touched and I find myself reacting. I find myself saying, well, that's not true. Then I get to invite myself to ask the question, what gets created when I see myself and others through the lens of separation and division? Now, when it comes to politics, because we are about to enter into this election, I personally have done a cleanse from the news for many, many years. I have not watched the news for many years, and I will confess, I was in a hotel room the other night and I watched for 30 seconds, and it became very clear to me why I decided to not do that to my psyche. And people will say, well, aren't you just burying your head in the sand? Maybe, but I don't want to continue to be programmed to see the world through division. When it comes to politics, I vote my conscience. I go into meditation, I take that into prayer, and I ask which candidate or which platform or which party or which ballot measure is most congruent with my deeper knowing, and I vote my conscience from that place, not because someone tells me I am this particular group of people, so I must think this way. And so for some of us, this is a foreign concept. For some of us, we're saying, but wait a minute. There is a right or a wrong or a good or a bad. There is a candidate that I think is trying to do the right thing, and another one who's trying to do the wrong thing. But here's the thing, if you take a survey of someone who's voting for that other candidate, they might have the same point of view. So I want to take a breath with that, and I want to invite a deeper conversation. And that deeper conversation is actually about consciousness itself. And I did a talk one time called Consciousness is an Algorithm. And in unity teachings and in New Thought teachings, we understand that what we focus on grows. What we feed and water is what we're going to experience more of. And I went to my social media several years ago and I said, oh, I don't really like seeing all this divisiveness on my social media. I'm going to consciously change my algorithm. So what do I mean by that? An algorithm is quite simple. Whatever we pause on, whatever we click on, whatever we comment on, the algorithm gives us more. So it doesn't matter if we send it hearts or if we send it frowny faces. Whatever we click on, whatever we focus on, we get more of. So if I'm in the conversation of division and us and them, the algorithm gives me more of that. And so I decided at one point to clean up my algorithm by I didn't unfriend anyone. I just gently and lovingly unfollowed some of the people who I really do love, but they were just being really divisive in their comments. I agreed with many of them. I'm like, wow, I agree with this person's point, but this like diatribe of like right and wrong and good and bad, I decided to unfollow. And I started following people or clicking on stories that really warmed my heart, that were congruent with my own sense of spiritual connection, something that is beyond opinions. Because at some point I woke up and I realized when I believe I am my opinions, I will be at war. I will be at war with myself and with others, even if it's just energetically, if I believe my thoughts are the truth of who I am. Through a series of events, spiritual experiences, meditation practice, spending time in new thought, there was a place where I started to understand, not just intellectually, but experientially, that I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. And when I understood that, I started realizing that I no longer needed to defend my point of view. I could stand for love, stand for peace, stand for oneness instead of standing against anything that seemed to oppose that. So sometimes people will say to me, yeah, but look what's happening in the world. People's rights are being taken away. One side might say our rights are in danger, and another side might say our freedoms are in danger. But the essence of that is this idea that if this one person gets into office, my rights will be taken away or my freedom will be taken away. And there's at least one political figure who some people say isn't very smart, but I think actually really understands how to manipulate consciousness very well. This person has managed to get people to be against them, and in their being against them, they have risen to power. And so if we were to turn away from all of that and say, I am standing for love, I am standing as love, I'm speaking the truth that is beyond the division, I'm looking for the way that I can actually connect with someone rather than seeing them as the other. Because if you look at the atrocities throughout human history, it has always been based in the dehumanization, the othering. And so the opposite of that is this knowing that at the core of each and every one of us is oneness. We are really one. So if we want to take the advanced course when it comes to politics, then we have a fundamental decision to make. Am I going to stand in unity's first principle? There is one power and one presence active in the universe and in my life. Am I going to stand in that? Am I going to say, I'm going to look for the essence, the God essence in this person, whether I agree with them or not? I'm going to be genuinely curious about how this person got their point of view. And then I'm going to be genuinely curious about how I got mine, because the power is in the standing for instead of standing against. Mother Teresa, whether she said it or not, was said to have said, I will not be in an anti-war demonstration, but if you have a peace rally or a peace march, I'm the first person there. And that's another way of saying, what am I standing for instead of what am I standing against? Because we know that as soon as I'm against, it creates more. And that happens on a personal level, in personal relationships. Maybe you have a family member who has a different political point of view than you. I believe I've told this story already, but to me, it warrants telling it again. My father and my stepmother came to visit, and I live in LA now. And my stepmother said, well, we live in LA too, Lower Alabama. And I just thought that was so great. And she came to visit, and we were, going around LA, and she said, people are so nice here and so open. I'm so surprised. So I said, well, tell me more about that. Well, people in the other LA, lower Alabama, had all kinds of things that they said about people in LA, all kinds of judgments they have, all kinds of things that they told me. Well, people in LA are going to be this. And she's like, that's not what I'm experiencing. And I said, well, don't worry. If we took a survey of, the next 10 people we saw in Los Angeles and said, what do you think of lower Alabama? I'm going to guess we might get some judgment. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to guess there might be some judgment. I even think about, I lived in San Francisco for 30 years, and for some reason, there's this thing where a lot of people in San Francisco don't like LA, but if you ask them why, they don't really know. They have this judgment of people in LA, and I'm always curious about that because my experience has shown me that I see what I expect to see. So if I make a fundamental decision that the core of each and every person is the very essence of God, light, love, and source, that is the truth of their being, and I am looking for that, there is a higher probability that I will see it. As a matter of fact, I think it's the only thing I will genuinely see. And when I realize that I'm not my opinions, then someone else is not their opinions either. Then we can start to find a place where we meet. And so I know, I'm going to say this in closing, I want to just invite a question. And that question is not, is my opinion or my point of view right and someone else is wrong, but what gets created when I believe I am my opinions? What gets created when I decide to post something? Because, social media is a real thing now, right? That's part of our consciousness. What gets created? Because I've seen some people, I know some people who, they're unity people or they're new thought people, and they're very much about love and light. And then, come political election time for the maybe 6 to 8 weeks before, they're not posting love and light. Let's just put it that way. They're posting some other things. And I notice if I have a judgment and I get to say, gosh, I've done that too. Because that's the place where I can start to understand and have compassion. I've done that too. And I know for myself, it came from fear. And what was under that fear? That fear was somehow the essence of who I am isn't whole and complete. The essence of another person isn't love and light. And as soon as I start seeing that, I start seeing that everywhere. And so I'll close the way I started, and that is, it is time for us to make a fundamental decision. Either God, source, love, light is everything, or God, source, love, light is nothing. That's the fundamental decision. And my invitation for you is to ask yourself, what gets created when I say, yeah, that's true, but, or I can say, I'm going to make a decision to see that, regardless of the circumstances, because life is a great experiment, and I'm going to be that in the world, and I'm going to look for that in every situation and see what happens. So as always, I'm deeply honored to be here. Thank you, as always, for the invitation to speak with your community. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Thank you so much, TJ. I'm going to spotlight Gary.
Everything beneath the sun breathes like a harmonium. Pure perfection has begun, shining like a midnight sun. Out of darkness I have come, I see God in everyone. Let me be an instrument, guided by an heaven sent. May these grapes of pain ferment, alchemized to love's content, ever be a sacrament, knowing God is my intent. God, let me know your name, hold me in the same breath as your word. Oh God, I feel you all around. Oh, how you astound me with your grace. Rolling like a thundercloud, let me live my love out loud, standing for mankind and proud, baptized in a holy shroud. Peace be still and know me now, God is in all I have found. God, let me know your name, hold me in the same breath as your word. Oh God, I feel you all around. Oh, how you astound me with your grace. Spinning like a prayer fields, turning like Ezekiel's wheels. Nothing like a kiss seals this spirit I've become. Knowing what I'm here for, rowing on to distant shores, flowing from the infinite, God in everyone. Out of darkness I have come, I see God in every